Hello fellow Misfortunates, quick updated Misfortune guide for Season 11. Most of you probably already know, but the build you can go for in every single game is the Press the Attack page with Press the Attack, Overheal, Bloodline, Coup de Grace with Magical Footwear, and Biscuit Delivery. This rune page is very streamlined. You get the synergies between Overheal and Misfortune's W. You W max, so you go 3 points in Q, then you W max, so you have W max by level 10, and as long as you're shielded, your W movement speed passive can never be interrupted. So you get the free boots, which accelerates your build, and you get the biscuits for the max mana mostly, because that allows you to have access to all your spells. You don't need your spells all that much because you will mostly operate with your Q and your W. And the item build that goes with this rune page is this one. So you start Doran's Blade and a potion, and I have experimented with Noon Quiver into Blade of the Ruined King, then upgrade to Kraken Slayer, but I'm actually not a fan anymore. You just go straight into Blade, then Kraken Slayer, and you can't even delay your boot upgrade until after Kraken, so you can fully focus on your power spikes. So this build is the most optimal pretty much. You can go this in every single matchup, it doesn't matter. This is always strong, you can always pick this if you want to climb, but, well, first and foremost, these secondary items, they're very situational. These are the most important. If you just get these every single game, you should be fine. Sometimes you need Grievous Wounds, sometimes you need QSS. Collector pretty much never, maybe a 6th item sometimes. But yeah, as long as you go with this core build and then whatever you need in the matchup, you're fine. But you can also go for this lovely rune page, which works in some matchups. It's not optimal every game, but if you have the right matchup, you can absolutely destroy enemies with that Emax Arcane Comet Misfortune. So when is Emax good? The easy answer is when your opponent is unable to deal with your poke damage, but there are actually a number of factors you need to take into account. First of all, who is your support? Does your support have special synergies with this build? Because obviously this build, it's weaker in the late game, but it's hyper oppressive in the early game, good at poking, very bad at all ins, because you don't even start Doran's Blade anymore, you start Tier when you go this. And this means if you can just poke the opponent down with your E, and if that E also synergizes with your support, let's say you have a brand support, even better when you're in voice comm with a dual Q. You have a brand support, you can just say them, hey, I'm gonna shoot my E now, and the slow then enables them to get their W, in case of brand, their W for free, which is huge damage in lane, and very few lanes will be able to deal with this. However, the enemy support is also very important. If they have sufficient sustain to out-sustain your poke damage, for example, in a Soraka lane, never play this. Soraka hard counters this, Yuumi hard counters this, because, well, your poke damage is not gonna stick, and then in the mid and late game, you're just gonna sit there with Scorch and Cheap Shot, and they're not gonna do as much as the Press the Attack rune page with Kraken Slayer, obviously. So, if your opponent is very susceptible to poke damage, for example, a Leona lane, or any tank support really, without shields and without heals. Shield support's also very nasty, because you can't deal with them. They can just shield on reaction, block the Arcane Comet, block the Scorch, block the Cheap Shot, and you don't want to pick it into that. But if the enemy support is not equipped to deal with poke damage, and especially if your lane partner needs to land some crucial skill shots, this is perfect. And not only poke supports, obviously poke doubles down, right? For example, brand Misfortune, but also hook supports. If it's Misfortune Thresh, you just lay down your E, Thresh gets a free hook. But I mean, this kind of only works in dual Q because you want to tell your support, I'm gonna go for E, else your cooldowns will be out of sync and it won't work anymore. So the item page that goes with this playstyle is also very simple. You always start Tear of the Goddess with 2 potions, and then E level 1, Q level 2, W level 3, then max E, then max Q, W is maxed last. It's very burst oriented. Your first item, well, you sit on tier, but while it's stacking, your first completed item is Eclipse. The Omnivamp between Eclipse and Ravenous Hunter is just enough, really. And the reason you go Eclipse and not any other mythic item is mainly that it amplifies your E plus R combo that much, because the Ever Rising Moon passive will hit any 2 spells or auto attacks, so E plus R instantly gets this off. Also, the stat profile is just amazing. It doesn't have any cooldown reduction or ability haste, but we got Manamune for that, and we go Essence Reaver immediately after. So Manamune into Lord Doms immediately would be more damage, but you really want a little bit more ability haste to make this more consistent. So very streamlined build, you will very rarely deviate from this. These items are highly situational. I would probably never buy them, except for a rapid fire cannon. When you're full build, you just sell boots for rapid fire, which is amazing, because then Q auto also triggers Ever Rising Moon, triggers Essence Reaver burst damage, triggers Manamune twice, and you can even one-shot tanks with this, really. It's super strong in team fights, because obviously E max rank is an AoE slow on a 10 seconds cooldown, which gets further reduced by these 2 items. It applies all those passives, and your R just hits like a truck. Obviously, you need to play very deliberately, which is also why I have Swifties in this. For example, you need to dodge multiple skill shots on reaction, or to bait them out even before you can press R. Because if there's a Leona on the enemy team, for example, she will just press R on you when you press R. But the bright side of this, you're not really limited to your ulti. Just Q auto does so much damage, and the utility from your E in teamfights is really amazing. So it's really all about the lane phase. This build is worse than the PTA build that I just showed you if you fail to be super oppressive in lane with it. Again, if the enemy can deal with poke damage, don't play this, it's not worth it. If you really want to, you still could if you just go for Gathering Storm and Eyeball Collection instead of the poke runes, but I'd not recommend it. However, in the right matchup, this is super oppressive and can win you games by itself because it locks the enemy bot lane out of the game completely. So let me know what you think about these, let me know what you think about the video format. This is probably the most spontaneous guide I've ever made. It's completely non-scripted, it's really just from the top of my head. Let me know what you think, and if you want to see the best Misfortune build, the PTA version in action, then click the link on your screen right there.